has kicked off his 4-day Southeast Asia tour in Indonesia. The aim is to strengthen ties with the region. Blinken met Indonesian President Joko Widodo and expressed support for the country's leadership in the so-called Indo-Pacific. The Indonesian side called it a warm and open discussion and said it wants more U.S. investment. The South China Sea issue has also been discussed. Blinken said he will focus on strengthening the regional security infrastructure in response to China's activities in the area. He will deliver a speech on Tuesday in Jakarta before heading to Malaysia and Thailand. And for more on that, let's get back to Antony. So tell us more about the major takeaways from Blinken's speech. I believe he just delivered it in Jakarta, right?
Yes, he just wrapped up his speech, and in his speech, the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, highlighted the economic and social importance of the region, and he said that the U.S. shares the same vision of, a secure and prosperous Indo-Pacific. He said that the U.S. wants to create a closer relationship with ASEAN, and that he mentioned that ASEAN plays a very key role in tackling crises and challenges in the region. Blinken said that America wants to ensure that the Indo-Pacific region remains open and accessible, and that they are committed to ensure freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. He said that more than $1 billion will go to support a transparent governance, and that money will go to investigative journalists, anti-corruption groups, and think tanks across the region. And he also said that the US's new Indo-Pacific strategy is an economic framework that includes elements of trade, infrastructure, supply chain resilience, and green and clean energy. Regarding that, he mentioned that the U.S. wants to work with countries to address climate change and speed up the transition to clean energy. Pandang.
So, Antony, how's Indonesian side responding to the remarks from Blinken? And are there any more items on Blinken's agenda in Indonesia?
So all the experts are saying that Indonesia is very firm about its principles of non-alliance, and Indonesia will resist any attempt by any foreign power to influence them. But that being said, President Joko Widodo has certain goals in mind. His goals are to create more jobs, to improve the economy, and he is willing to work with any partner who will help him reach those objectives. And as for U.S. Secretary of State Blinken, he will today also meet with the Indonesian Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi. The two of them will hold a joint press conference and sign a memorandum of understanding. After that, Secretary Blinken will meet with Indonesian youths to talk about the challenges of the pandemic. After that, he will leave for Malaysia and Thailand, where he will spread the message that the U.S. wants to work very closely with their partners in the Indo-Pacific region and Southeast Asia as well. Pandang.
Thank you very much. Our correspondent Antony Blinken in Jakarta. Prior to Blinken's visit to the region, Southeast Asian nations have already received a number of high-ranking U.S. officials in recent months. Wang Haiyang has more.
4 years after the Trump administration's America First agenda, the U.S. is trying to build a more united front. And that includes a growing diplomatic engagement in Southeast Asia. A series of visits by senior officials began with Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman in late May and June, signaling a comeback. She urged Cambodia to adopt a balanced policy. In Indonesia, she touted shared values and called for cooperation in Thailand. In July, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin visited Singapore, Vietnam, and the Philippines. He stressed that deterrence remained the cornerstone of the U.S. security umbrella in the region. He said that the U.S. will not flinch when its interests are threatened, but said the U.S. is committed to a constructive role with China. In Singapore, Vice President Kamala Harris declared that the partnerships in Singapore, in Southeast Asia, and throughout the Indo-Pacific are a top priority. She sought to reassure Southeast Asian governments that the U.S. would not force countries to choose between it and China. But she called on Vietnam to join the U.S. in challenging China is what she called coercion. Southeast Asian nations have avoided taking sides, adopting a hedging strategy. Wang Haiyang, CGTN.
For more insight into Blinken's visit, let's talk to Professor Azmi Hassan, a senior political analyst based in Kuala Lumpur. Thank you very much for joining us, Professor. So, I believe you've read a transcript of Secretary of State Antony Blinken's speech in Jakarta. Do you think it has any substance?
Yes, I did, Pandang. But again, when Blinken said they don't want to force ASEAN to choose between China and Beijing, or China and other states, for this example, but Blinken explicitly talk about China aggressiveness in South China Sea, for example. So in a way, yes, it contained a substance in a way that he asks or he requests ASEAN to choose with either with other states or with China. I guess it is very obvious from Blinken's speech, Pandang.
But have you sensed any pressure from the US side on subtly asking ASEAN to choose sides? Because in his speech, as we just heard from our correspondent, Blinken said the United States will attribute about $1 billion in so-called transparent governance in the country, investigative journalism, things like that, NGOs. That sounds like a familiar recipe in regime change incited by the United States.
Yes, I guess it's very subtle indeed. But again, I think United States learned from China because China, in terms of giving aids to ASEAN, in terms of infrastructure aids and BRI, for example, China is very successful in this matter, in this sector, in economic matter. So I think United States is trying to do the similar things, I guess. They're trying to cajole ASEAN so that, in a way, two-sided with United States. In this case, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand are very, very neutral in this particular. I think these three important nations of ASEAN, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand, is very important on how United States trying to subvert China's influence in Southeast Asia, or more specifically in Indo-Pacific.
Do you think the so-called American proposed Indo-Pacific idea can actually stand? Basically, it's India plus Southeast Asia, maybe Australia. And also, do you think Antony Blinken's visit this time is actually playing the softer side of the US push against China, as you just mentioned? Because in a recent speech, US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said the US doesn't want an Asian version of NATO, but instead an anti-China coalition.
Yes, Pandang, I'm not sure whether it's a softer side on Blinken visit, because as I see it, AUKUS, for example, Australia, UK, and United States, for example, is more on the hard side. And Quad, can you remember? Yeah, it's true what he said. Is Indo-Pacific is just India plus Asia-Pacific. But again, I think if you add AUKUS, if you add Quad, I think it's kind of pressure for ASEAN to choose, because I think United States from beginning Lord Austin visit, Kamala Harris visit, and now Blinken visit, I think they are trying to force how soft it is ASEAN to choose, whether it's China or whether it's United States. I think that's the scenario, what's going on right now, Pandang.